What's up, my friends? Wobble Rocket here. Today we are taking a look at Witchcraft Survivors. This is a new action roguelike, very similar to Vampire Survivors. The game is from Catpix Studios and it's scheduled for release in November. I actually received a free review copy of this game, so we're going to hop into it. I played a couple of rounds of this. We'll hop in and see what we can do. The characters are kind of elemental based. I've actually unlocked a couple of them. There's Magnus the Fiery, and I really love the character art for each of the different mages. We're going to go with Magnus the Fiery, and you've got a couple of different modes. You can change your difficulty. I will say that the game can get pretty difficult pretty quickly, so we're going to start on the lowest difficulty. You can also change a couple of the different modes. The standard mode, I found the movement speed to be a little bit slow for my taste. There is a really cool mode where you have to stay in a moving circle, and as long as you do that, you get a huge boost to your collection radius. There's a shorter run that decreases the level timer. There's a hallucination mode, which I gotta be honest, I'm not really sure why the developers put this in, unless it's just as a joke. It's pretty unplayable, even without any sort of photosensitivity issues. And then this is my favorite mode right here, is speed up. It does include a big increase to enemy strength and their walk speed, but it also increases your walk speed and your cooldown reduction. So we're gonna hop right in. Rather than the style like Vampire Survivors has, where you have, say, 6 weapon slots and 6 passive slots, Witchcraft Survivors gives you, a large selection of inventory slots at the bottom, and you can fill these with either active weapons or with passive effects, and those effects can be upgraded. This is a format that I first saw in Nomad Survival, which is another really interesting game. We're gonna go with Fire Hand. This will give us one of several area of effect spells that we can get with Magnus. Nomad Survival was the first game that I saw that used this sort of format where you kind of can make your own decisions of whether or not you want to stack up on passive effects or whether or not you want to stack up on active spells. I will say that this game, a lot of the features that are in it at this point will be very familiar to players who have played several games in this genre. The swarms of crows that kind of fly through remind me a lot of the swarms that'll fly through in Rogue Genesia. We're going to upgrade our Book of Knowledge. That's going to increase our experience rate and should make us speed up quite a bit. I'm definitely going to grab Ring of Regeneration. That'll help with our health as well. Let's grab Fire Flower. This will give us another area of effect spell, and this one will actually do pretty good damage. As you upgrade Fire Flower, you'll get more and more of them, and they will start to fill up a lot more of the screen. We'll upgrade our Fireball. That'll give us another projectile. As far as music and graphics go, the game is okay. I do really like the graphics on the mages. I feel like the graphics on the backgrounds could use a little work. They feel a little bit flat to me. I'm not entirely certain that Grasslands is the best fit for the atmosphere of the game to start with. I haven't unlocked any of the other maps yet, so I don't have really any form of comparison there. Let's go ahead and grab more experience. And the Flame Axe is going to be very familiar to anyone who's played Vampire Survivors because it performs in exactly the same way as the axe in Vampire Survivors. It spawns from the top of your character, arcs over, and then penetrates down through the enemy pack, which means it's mostly useful for attacking enemies that are beneath you on the screen. We'll grab the Magma Geyser. That's another area of effect spell that will trigger for us. Knockback can be a little bit odd in this game. Typically in most games, knockback forcefully pushes the enemies away from your character, but in this case, knockback tends to send the enemies away from whatever effect is knocking them back. So in this case, if there's like a fire geyser that spawns right here, it can actually shove some of these enemies more closely to me, and that can be a little bit problematic sometimes. Also, the big swarms that swoop in from each side of the screen can actually shove other enemies in front of you. So even if you dodge the swarm, you may not dodge the monsters themselves. We're just gonna keep stacking our XP rate. Hopefully we'll start picking up some more weapons soon, because if not, this may end up being a pretty short run. I'm gonna grab Holy Grail. This is a passive effect that's gonna increase our health regeneration, but it'll also give us a automatic revive should we end up dying. Napalm is a very large area of effect that will definitely help us out. I gotta get some health, so we need to be looking for some food items that will drop around us. Go ahead and add some more fireballs. Okay, there's some bread, that'll help at least a little bit. I will say that gameplay wise, there are a couple of choices that I wouldn't have made in the development of this game. There's no way to target your attacks at all, which is fine. You know, Vampire Survivors doesn't have any targeted attacks either, but the targeting logic seems a little bit off. Sometimes your attacks will just randomly fire off at an enemy that isn't anywhere close to you, and until you've upgraded your damage a little bit, that can actually become a problem early on in the game, because your initial spells typically don't deal enough damage to destroy the enemy in one hit, even on the lowest difficulty. That's going to make things a little bit tricky, because you can quickly get a couple of minutes into a run and not have killed enough enemies to get the number of upgrades that you need. The game also really likes to put you in situations where you cannot avoid damage. You saw a pretty good example of that with the ring of enemies that spawned around me earlier in the run, and they'll actually happen again pretty soon. When those spawn and then you have a large pack of enemies in front of you, usually you cannot deal enough damage to quickly shoot those enemies down, which means that you're going to take damage no matter what. I do think that if the developers added some sort of a dash function that showed some sort of invulnerability while you did it, that would definitely improve things. Chests are a nice little inclusion. They really just drop a bunch of loot, so they can be a nice way to kind of level up. As you can see, this is another area like where I was talking about, where a dash function would at least allow me to move around this space and minimize the amount of damage that I'm taking from having to walk through some of these enemy packs. Because the enemies in the outer ring have so much health, it's very difficult to punch through them. Although it is possible, you can deal enough damage to destroy them if you're lucky. But again, because you can't auto-target your abilities, or you can't manually target your abilities, that is very difficult to do, and you just kind of have to get lucky. We're going to grab Scroll of Haste. That'll decrease the cooldown on our attacks, and that will stack pretty nicely over time. The music in the game definitely needs some work. I would say that it's probably the game's weakest point at this time. I do like the metal riff, but there's only one music track, and the length of that track is very, very short. So it ends up looping constantly. And after a while, I mean, we're about 7 minutes into this run, it really starts to become a little tedious. So hopefully the developers will add some additional tracks to the game soon. This is still a beta. I think the current version is 0.7.8. The game is planned for release in November, so I'm hoping that we'll see some good development before then. It's got a lot of potential. I think the game has the potential to be really, really good. It doesn't take a lot of really innovative steps. Most of the things that are in Witchcraft Survivors are things that I've seen in other survivor genre games. I haven't really seen anything that's too original, and in fact several of the weapons and their behaviors are almost carbon copies of things that I've seen in other games. That said, you know, there are 5 different mages that you can unlock, and I've only played around with 2 others aside from Magnus. Several of their abilities are just sort of palette swaps. The Ice Mage has an icicle attack that performs almost identically to the Fire Flower. It also has a Water Geyser attack that performs almost identically to the Lava Geyser. On the other hand, the second character, who has sort of like a dark magic kind of feel, that character has, yeah. See, there was not really any way to avoid damage in this space, and I took damage, and there's really nothing you can do. But like I was saying, the Dark Mage has more penetrating and more bouncing attacks. Like, it has a spear attack that will penetrate through several enemies. It has summonable minions that will start firing at other enemies. So I think if there's a little bit of work put into really varying up the playstyles, I think that would go a long way towards improving the game. Even though the game is very elemental based, there doesn't seem to be any sort of like elemental effects. So it would be neat to see, you know, like a damage over time effect for fire, or a slower freezing effect for the Ice Mage. All right, we're gonna keep stacking our lava puddle. We're about ready to max out our experience gain, and we're finally starting to get some respectable damage here. But again, you can see a couple times where the knockback is actually not a benefit to me. It's actually shoving enemies closer towards me, and that can be a big problem. It just doesn't feel good, because if you were to upgrade your knockback in some way, it would just exacerbate those problems. So I think the developer definitely needs to take a look at knockback and kind of change the way it behaves just a little bit. Hey, the first boss is about to appear in just a second. I've fought him a couple times, but I haven't beaten him yet. 200% additional damage on Fireball is really, really nice. I think we're going to go with that. I do really, really like the design of the boss of this level. I think he's really cool looking. Again, bosses would be better, I think, if there were some, even just a couple of spells that were manually targetable. You know, if I could target my fireballs on him so that I could actually guarantee that when I'm kiting him around that he's taking substantial damage, that would feel a lot more fun. Right now, it's just sort of a matter of running around, trying to lure him into my lava puddles as much as possible, because that's really the most predictable damage that I can do, is luring the boss through the lava puddles. Let's grab an increase to our magma geyser. That's going to be a nice boost to our damage there. After we finish this run, whether we win or lose, we'll pop into some of the upgrade screens and check those out. Let's grab an increase to our lava puddle. The cooldown benefit might have been a better DPS increase overall, just because it would affect all of our skills. I do feel like most of the skills scale pretty well, so once you start adding additional points into them, they start getting pretty strong. Let's go ahead and grab that cooldown upgrade. We got the boss about halfway down. Without a dodge function, your ability to dodge attacks is very, very dependent on your movement speed. And there are some upgrades in the character experience page and in the shop that allow you to upgrade your movement speed. But the base movement speed is fairly slow. I will say though that for being a game in the action roguelike genre, this is one of very, very few that I can play for a very long time and it doesn't give me any kind of problems with my photosensitive epilepsy. There's no flashing effect. Even the spell effects are, you know, pixel art rather than being, you know, flashy 3D effects. And so that makes it a very, very accessible game for me. At a certain point, you almost kind of forget that the boss is even there because you really just have to treat the boss just like any other monster and just dodge them and wait for your randomly target effects to destroy their health bar. So I think the developers could probably do a little bit to just kind of make the bosses a little more interesting. You could even decrease the boss's health and trade up with like giving it more dangerous attacks or something. We have 5 minutes remaining on the clock. I don't know if the run ends after we defeat the boss or if it ends after the clock runs out. We'll just have to wait and see. It could go either way on that, and I've seen in other games different ways that plays out. So some games the timer is sort of like a time limit to beat the boss, and then in other games beating the boss immediately ends the run regardless of how much time is left. And then there are other games like Striving for Light Survival where even if you defeat the boss, you still have to wait for the timer to run out. So there's a chest up here, so that's why I'm heading to the northwest. You do have a little indicator whenever a chest spawns, so that's nice. I do think for as far as you have to travel for them, chests could probably be a little bit more interesting. Maybe the developers will add some sort of like interesting relics or something that can change the way your build performs. Getting pretty tight here. Yeah. See, again, there was no way to avoid damage in that space. So unfortunately, that run ended. I was really hoping that we could have taken out that boss, but it just didn't happen. Let's take a look at some of the upgrades. Each character, as you use that character, you gain experience that is specific to that character. So all of the experience that we gained in that run will only apply to Magnus. But you can upgrade firepower, reduce damage taken, increase your experience gain and gold gain, critical chance, walk speed, area of effect. The nice thing about all these boosts is as you gain them, they also provide a minor boost to all of the other characters. There's also a couple of abilities that you can unlock. Like in this case, this will unlock the tactical nuke ability as an upgrade choice during level up. It also provides a 10% damage boost for this character and 2% for all other characters. The other choice that we have right now is the Phoenix attack ability. I do like that you don't have to max out these basic skills in order to unlock the higher up abilities. I think that's a nice choice. You can refund and respec your abilities as well. You have the unlock page, which the game has a ton of achievements and they're all pretty cool. Survive for 20 minutes in the desert stage with the Earth Mage on 3 Skulls difficulty, or defeat over 5,000 enemies in a single run with the Water Mage. So there's a lot of those kind of things, and there's a whole bunch of room for additional achievements to be added later on. as you collect additional achievements, you'll unlock some additional abilities. So the first reward that we'll unlock is additional rerolls that are available during level up. As far as options, there's not a whole lot. You do have the option to reset your progress, which is something that a lot of action roguelites don't include, and I really would prefer that they did. After I have, you know, progressed to a point where I'm dominating the game, I'd really like to be able to reset and go back and do something else. The music is kind of getting a little bit on my nerves, so I'm going to turn that down. I'm going to just real quick hop into one of these other characters, and we'll play around with one of the other modes that I really kind of enjoyed. This is the collection radius mode. I'm not going to do a full run here, just want to show this. I thought it was pretty cool that there is this ring around you. I would suggest that the developer probably make the color a little bit more apparent. For somebody who has like a red-green colorblind, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to see that circle and know where it is, particularly when you start getting a whole bunch of effects. But as long as you stay in that circle, your collection radius is increased by 800%. Which means that most attacks are going to come from pretty far away. You can see that the Dark Mage has a couple of different abilities, including probably the first option for a targeted ability. Unfortunately, the targeting is only do you want it to aim to the left or to the right. We can grab the Dark Axe, but you can see in just a second that the Dark Axe performs exactly the same way as the Fiery Axe. It might be interesting to just even see some basic changes to the attack pattern for the different versions. You know, what if you had the Dark Axe targeted in the opposite direction, like if it went from the bottom of the character and went to the top of the screen? This is one of my favorite abilities of the Dark Mage. It has the Seeker ability, which spawns these little eyeballs that start shooting arrows at enemies. And Dark Spear is pretty cool. It's just a long range attack that goes in the direction that you're facing, and any enemy that it hits, it will pierce through. So the Dark Mage definitely has some differences in the playstyle. I would just like to see the developers kind of lean into that. I think if the developers leaned into giving each mage their own unique playstyle, that would play a lot better. I want to see real quick what happens if you step out of this circle. I don't know if it automatically kills you or if it just starts decreasing your health. Yeah, it looks like you start taking damage over time as long as you're out of the ring. And it might just be my perception, but it does seem like over time the ring starts to speed up the couple of times that I've played this. So upgrading your movement speed throughout the run might be a necessary thing as well. Pop back to the main menu screen. I love the menu screen. I think it's very simple. It would be nice maybe to have just like a logo for Witchcraft Survivors, so you know what game you're playing. All in all, I would say the game has a lot of potential. I think it's still very obviously in development. It needs some work. If the developers want to kind of vary up some of the abilities, if they want to definitely increase the music, and my biggest gripe would just be that it's a very passive game. You know, there's not a lot for the player to do other than move around the screen. If there were just one or two active abilities, like being able to actively target a couple of your spells, or being able to dash out of the way of enemy attacks, or even, you know, this is a game where you're playing a mage. Give us a couple of active spell abilities that have a cooldown. You know, give me a powerful ability that I can only use every 3 minutes or so and have to manually activate. Something like that I think would really liven the game up. As it stands, I'm not sure how much replayability it's going to have. Yeah, there's a lot of upgrades to get. There's a lot of grinding that you can do to get the gold. But without that active abilities, it's going to be pretty difficult to sell me on wanting to spend that much time in the game. Again, this game is releasing in November. I don't know what price point the developers are going to go at. As it is, I would say, you know, if the game is at a very low price point, you know, under $3, I'd probably buy it, and I'd probably spend a good amount of time in it. If they want to push to a higher price point than that, I think the game's definitely going to have some more development. But it's a cool game. There's a free demo on Steam. I'll put a link in the description. You can check it out there. Give the game a shot. It's got some interesting ideas. It's got a lot of potential. I'm really curious to see how this one develops over the next couple months as we move closer to a release. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. My name's Wobble Rocket. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you around.